Lambrecht, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here. It's your first time here, and you sat in now with the intro conversation with Jonathan. And you being in the solar industry, I would like to pick your brain a little bit regarding the solar panel rebate as well. But before we get there, just maybe introduce yourself. Who are you? Your company, Orka Solar, what do you do? And just give the viewers a little bit of a background.
All right. I work on the commercial and industrial space with our customers there. With Orka Solar, we provide them solutions for backup and cost savings. They have the same problems as us with our houses. They also want power to continue their business and also save on their electricity bills.
Wonderful. So we heard now from an auditor's side regarding the solar panel rebate that was scrapped in a way, or in a sense. You being in the solar industry, feet on the ground, working with individuals and companies, what are your thoughts regarding the solar panel rebate in the recent budget speech that was not extended, or let's call it was cancelled or scrapped? Do you think it has an impact, will have an impact, or what's your general thoughts regarding that?
Yeah, obviously every bit helps, and some households are very constrained. But I think from the get-go, it wasn't significant enough, and also a bit not as straightforward. But if we look at the data, from March 23 to Jan 2024, there's been a 66% increase in the so-called rooftop installations. And that's Eskom data from Eskom. Technically, that's the amount installed it's more than the largest coal-fired power station in the country. So it's significant. There's a but. In that same period, or the year 2022 to 2023, load shedding has also increased with more than 60%. And I believe that's been a bigger driver rather than the tax incentive for installations. Anecdotally, if I look at Orka Solar and our residential business, it supports that.
And I think it makes sense in this sense, I am a consumer. I'm also in that. And yes, the tax incentive or the rebate for an individual was there for us, and it was maybe just the final tip just to say, okay, let's do it. But the biggest driver was always being so frustrated with load shedding, and obviously my wife putting pressure on me. I mean, you've got kids and schoolwork in the evenings and studying for exams, and you just need other options. So I think that supports that as well. I know that when we discussed this beforehand, you also mentioned that the individual rebate is only one side of the coin. But the more pertinent one that you want to talk about as well is like Jonathan also, the tax deduction when it comes to business solar. How does that work from your perspective?
Yeah, he explained it very well. Thanks for that. But that's a bigger incentive, purely because of the numbers. I like to look at the numbers, sit with our customers. If it makes sense, then it makes sense. Obviously, it's a big capital expenditure for any solar project in the commercial space. And when you have a taxable or tax deduction of that size, it does move the needle. Like Jonathan explained very well, let's say you have a 1 million rand profit that you're going to make at the end of the year. You could invest that in a renewable project, and effectively you can deduct 330,000 rand from that investment. So that is significant. So commercial space, we don't know if it's going to be extended. We can't make predictions on that, but for a commercial client considering it, it is significant.
Yeah, and obviously, given the fact that you say there's uncertainty regarding the possible extensions and things like that, in one sense, it must just put with you the idea that, okay, let's rather act now and put yourself up for the future than hoping for relief in the future. And you and I had an interesting discussion the other day where you also indicated that it's so much more important to get at a point or a place where you are dependent on yourself for energy and for electricity. So is there a place, regardless of load shedding, for someone to say, listen, but let's rather do solar, even if there's no load shedding for the future?
Yes, and we as Africans, we are so resilient, and we've got such abundance here. And the combination of that, it just enables you to move forward, especially with solar. But if you look at our country in the southern tip of Africa, whenever there's a problem or a shortage, whether it's in the schools being privatized or hospitals being privatized, I'm convinced energy is the same. You'll see in the next couple of years, or maybe longer than shorter or shorter than longer, I don't know. But what I do know is Eskom will just become, dare I say, obsolete. Eskom will move to the background, let me put it that way. It makes sense for businesses to take control of their power supply. Yes, don't rush just because we have the tax incentive. That's not what I'm saying. Start investigating, do a proper due diligence, look at the feasibility, and take control of that part of your business as well. You have much more certainty with the type of technology that can be installed today than you have with the utility and the current state that it's in.
Lambrecht, I want to jump ship a little bit now. And a thing that Jonathan mentioned was the supporting documentation that you will now need when you hand up your documents for SARS, invoice, but a specific thing is your COC, Certificate of Compliance, for your installation. Now, in the previous video, I made mention of that, and I was under the impression, so let's say you get an installation of just an inverter and batteries. I thought that in that instance, you don't need a additional COC to be issued. Only when you do a solar panel installation, being alternative power supply. But what is the reality thereof, and when do you need a COC?
It's actually quite clear and simple. Our regulation states that whenever you do a permanent fixture to a building, whether it's a wall socket that's moved 2 meters, or whether it's panel installations, and permanent being defined as you need tools to install or to remove it. For that, you need a certificate of compliance. And also, when you have change of ownership of that property, you also need a certificate of compliance. So those are the two rules governing that.
And that's interesting, and that's obviously where my reality lies. I transfer properties, and we get in the situation where we need a COC to be issued, and someone will say, listen, but 6 months ago, whenever I installed solar panels, or solar, let's call it the whole solution, panels, inverter, battery, and I say, okay, listen, it was 6 months ago, so you most probably still have your COC. It's fine for 2 years, so please bring it and we're happy. And she says, well, no one gave us a COC. No COC was issued. Now we have to get someone else. They go out and then they say, listen, but this installation is a total mess. I'm not going to touch it. The person that does the installation, should they provide the COC? Should they organize it? Or how does it work, or should it work in practice?
The bottom line is the owner of the system, or the property owner, needs to be issued a COC. It can be subcontracted. You can contract it out to an electrician, a qualified electrician. So it doesn't have to be the installer. I would ask questions if my installer can't give me a COC, because the COC then certifies that the installation has been done to a certain standard. It just makes sense that the same company do it. yeah, but you need, like I said, for any of those type of work, you do need a COC.
And I think that's a very important point for our viewers, because I think that's one of the major slip-ups. And I don't know if you guys get to installations every now and again where it's a mess, or if you get called in after the fact. But I see so often in these situations that people are not issued with COCs. And I would assume that there's lots of installers that they import panels, install it, and no mention is made of COCs, and they just disappear again. And I would think as well, I haven't read up on that, but it should be an issue with your insurance as well. So I would think in your 100-page insurance document somewhere, there will be COCs or SAN. All your installations must be in terms of SANS codes and things like that. So people should take note and make sure that they get a COC for their installations.
Yeah, if you look at from the insurance point of view, they're going to ask the simple question: if in the event that something do go wrong, was this installation according to regulation? And the COC is just a proof of that. So you want to do it right. You don't want to scramble around at that stage. But to your earlier comment on people not doing it to the correct standard, as much as it excites me that there's so many installers and so many people driving around with panels on their bakkies, that's good. That's good for our industry, the exposure. It's good for our country, the generation that's happening. But as in any industry, like a mechanic, you work with people you trust, because it's difficult for me when I service my car to know exactly what has been done onto what standard. So just make sure the people you work with, that there's a trust and a relationship that you have with them. That's the most important thing.
I think that's a good point to wrap the conversation up. Any final thoughts from your side that you would like to leave with the viewers?
Nothing except that it's all positive, and I'm excited about the industry. And regardless of the SARS benefit, the tax incentive, it shouldn't change people's. There's no reason to change your view on considering alternative energy.
Thank you, Lambrecht. Great to have you here.